It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
We have Congressman Rick Crawford on the line. Rick, welcome back, sir. Thanks, as always.
Hey, you do this all the time on Friday. So I'm listening to your bumper music, and I'm getting into Johnny Cash, and then you make me talk.
I know. Well, you know what I was thinking? We always say with Johnny Cash Friday, we try to listen to as much Johnny Cash as we can, while at the same time peppering in the news of the day. And you're the news. And oftentimes people, oftentimes when I get to the news, they're like, oh, we want to listen to more Johnny Cash. And so, yeah, it's kind of a disadvantage sometimes,
Yeah.
to be on during that day. Hey, let me ask you this, Rick. Your band, Triple Nickel, do you guys ever do any Johnny Cash covers?
Yeah, a couple. Yeah, of course, everybody does, Folsom Prison Blues, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You kind of got to do that. But, yeah, we do a couple, yeah.
Nice. Okay,
Yeah.
Well, so what's going on, Rick? Are you in D.C. now?
I am. Yeah, we are in session today, and it's approach season, so it's a busy time of the year when we're trying to get, basically get all the bills paid, for the next fiscal year. And believe it or not, I mean, we're making good progress on our approach bills. We're on schedule, on track, and everything. And we want to understand the Senate's actually doing something for a change. And so, that's good news. We're on track to maybe get these things done.
Wow, that's good. Yeah, and that's how long has it been since we've actually kind of had regular order when it comes to the budgeting process?
1994, I think.
Oh gosh!
I mean, you got to laugh to keep from crying. It's really kind of sad. But yeah, it's as I understand it, 1994 was the last time that we got all 12 appropriations bills through both chambers, conferenced, and signed. So what we end up with is sometimes a portion, we get a few of them done, then we do an omnibus appropriations bill as a catch-all to clean up, or something like that. Or, what we've seen so much of in the last few years is these continuing resolutions. And so, I'm hoping that'll change this time around.
Yeah. I've been following a little bit of, what's going on with the trade. And I know we had you on maybe a couple months ago talking about, these different tariffs and things like that. Are there any new developments, any new concerns that you have with what's going on?
Yeah, I think there's really kind of something that escaped my attention, but really I think it's worth sharing, and that is that if you view the tariffs in context of tax reform, what that means. And so what we're seeing is that because of our tax reform, because now we are a more competitive market in the global space, because we have fewer U.S. businesses wanting to locate offshore, and because we have more U.S. businesses that are located offshore, either coming back or repatriating their dollars to invest in the United States, it's empowering our economy, and the effect that it's having on the Chinese economy is really it's a pretty chilling effect. And so if you combine that with tariffs, this is why China is in a panic about tariffs. And so when we say tariffs, from the trade standpoint here in the United States, people tend to freak out and they tend to panic. And thinking back to my ag econ class at Arkansas State University, tariffs were inherently bad. We can't do tariffs because that's bad for U.S. agriculture. But then at the same time, we talk about terms like inelastic or elastic demand. Well, the demand in China is decidedly inelastic. They have to have soybeans, and there's only a certain number of them out there, and we're a top 3 exporter. And so, in the short term, what you've seen is a drop in the price. But what's taking place now is these countries are scooping up U.S. soybeans, and we haven't even gotten to harvest yet. So I think what you're seeing is that there's a really incredible amount of pressure on the Chinese economy. I think they have been, sort of what I call economic saber rattling now, and have done for quite some time. They're a belligerent actor in economically. They're a belligerent actor militarily, politically, and otherwise. And so, it's really about time that we decided, hey, we're going to get in the war too. Quite frankly, China has been at war with us for at least 20 years. Ever since they've been in the WTO, you'd think that would have somewhat of a stabilizing effect in terms of our relationship with China. But in fact, it hasn't, because the WTO allows them to get away with a lot of shenanigans, like, for example, manipulating their currency. They refuse to, they float their currency for their own benefit so that they can improve their buying power and decrease our buying power. So it's not a two-way street. It's not fair. It's not all just about trade. It's about monetary policy. It's about tax policy. And all of these things combined seem to be coming to a head right now. And at the end of the day, what we need to understand is China has to have us in a variety of ways, and that's certainly true with soybeans. They have to have U.S. soybeans. They just can't get along without them. So whether or not we sell directly to China or is really not the question. U.S. soybeans will go to China. They're already doing that now. They're going through, purchases from Brazil and Argentina and other nations that are buying at a discount, because right now we're trading at a discount of anywhere from $1.50 to $1.95 against Brazilian soybeans. But they're buying them, and it's going into China. And the other thing is the European Union is buying U.S. soybeans. And that's always been a tough sell. The EU is difficult to deal with on a good day. And so for them to come in and buy, they're the number 2 importer of soybeans in the world by a distant margin. China imports 95 million, or expected to import 95 million tons this year. That's up 26% from 4 years ago. The EU is at 14.5 million tons. So it's a very distant second, but still a significant destination for U.S. soybeans. And the fact that they're buying U.S. soybeans now is also good.
I mean, this is really great information. We're talking with Congressman Brett Crawford, and he certainly is very knowledgeable about how this, I say trade war, only because I'm, corrupted by these headlines as well. We've got the mainstream media. They use these words like trade war. I think they do it to try to, really kind of, diminish the positive aspects of this, and how we do actually have to start reasserting ourselves so that America can get a better deal. That seems to be what the president is doing here. He's trying to alter what has been an imbalance that it seems to have grown over the decades. Recently, we played this at the first of the hour. We talked about the president and what he said to the Sun paper about, the Brexit deal. And, you mentioned it's hard to negotiate with the EU. The president said yesterday to British media that if they don't actually have a clean Brexit and actually allow this to happen, it's going to jeopardize the potential direct trade deal with the UK and the United States. Because if Theresa May just tries to rename whatever their association is with the European Union, and it's basically exactly the way it was, but it's under a different name, then Donald Trump is saying, well, we would still be negotiating basically with the EU, and we don't want to do that. Like you said, I think a lot of Americans, Rick, are just now educating themselves as to the trade realities that we haven't really known about in the past. Like, I never knew it was hard to negotiate with the EU until you just said it.
Yeah, they're on their best day, they're tough to deal with. But and look, there's a whole lot of political correctness and issues that are viewed through that lens that really kind of color our relationship with the EU, and it's been a problem for quite a while. But President Trump went over there and with the NATO conference, and he just basically said, he put his cards on the table. Here's how it's got to be. And we're not going to, we can't be responsible. James Mattis said this, it's almost as if we love your children more than you do, because we're doing the lion's share to protect you from Russia. Meanwhile, you're doing business with Russia. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, how does this make sense? And so Great Britain voted to leave the EU. Now, I'm an Anglophile. I lived in Great Britain as a kid. I love the British people. I was over there recently, and I can tell you that you've either got to do it or don't. This sort of half step that Theresa May is engaging in is sort of an effort to try and persuade people that, yes, she's responding to the vote of the British people, but at the same time retain that sort of what she views as that level of comfort with the European Union. But she's not really making a Brexit. She's making a more of a political accession, if nothing else. And quite frankly, I don't think the British people are going to stand for that. I mean, just from the tone that I perceived while I was over there last month, I think that you've either got to go all in or all out. But this half-stepping is not palatable, and I think she's in trouble. She was a Remainer, and now is responsible for implementing Brexit. She's trying to half-step it, and ultimately, you've got to get with the program or get out. And I think the British people are probably going to say it's time for you to go. But that said, back to the trade deal, Donald Trump's absolutely right. We want to have a trade deal with Great Britain, of all people. They're our greatest and longest ally. We certainly want to have a relationship with them, but we're not going to do it as an agent of the EU. I mean, that doesn't help us. And the EU is a separate deal, and we've tried that. We've and continue to try that. We continue to try to engage and trade with the EU, and they're extremely difficult to deal with. And so it would be much better for everybody involved if the UK just did their own thing, reestablished themselves as a sovereign, reclaimed their border security, reclaimed their cultural heritage, and were proud of it, and they want to be. And this is what I love about the British people, and that's really what I love about the American people. And I think that's what you're seeing. And it's not just, by the way, it's not just in Great Britain that this is taking place. The whole globalist notion, which, EU is sort of a microcosm of that, that's really not taking root. I was met with some Australians recently, and it's an awful lot like the United States, the dynamic there with really kind of proclaiming their own independence and sovereignty and being proud of their heritage as Australians, as we are as being Americans, and as Filipinos are of being Filipino. And I mean, why should these nations be deprived of their history, their heritage, and their culture? And the answer is they shouldn't be. It doesn't mean that we can't do business together. It doesn't mean that we can't have economic ties to these nations. It just means that we're different. And we have different history, we have different culture, and quite frankly, that's what I like about these other countries. That's why I like visiting other countries. If we just shake up the world into one homogenized, globalized system, what's the fun in that? Heck, I mean, why do I want to, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, I enjoy going to Great Britain because it's Great Britain, right? I enjoy going and visiting other countries because they're different from ours. But I love America, and I still believe that we're the best country in the world, and there is such a thing as American exceptionalism that doesn't necessarily make us better, but certainly makes us markedly different from the rest of the world. And I think that's what the rest of the world really wants to see. And these folks in some of these foreign countries that I named, they are craving U.S. leadership that's been absent for about 10 years. And Donald Trump is really about bringing back U.S. leadership. And so that's what's taking place around the world.
Yeah, it certainly is. I concur with your sentiments there. We're talking with Congressman Rick Crawford. Last question. So I know, the House has nothing really to do with the confirmation process of Supreme Court nominees, but what are your thoughts on Brett Kavanaugh? What's the feeling up there among your colleagues?
Well, the book on him is, he's an originalist, much like Clarence Thomas, and I think that what you could expect from him is, I don't care about, conservative as much as I care about constitutionalists, and so I think that's what you have in a pick like Kavanaugh. I read an interesting analysis earlier today or this morning, and what the liberals up here are mostly afraid of is not Kavanaugh, but they're actually afraid of the Constitution. And so they talk about the Constitution, but what they really want to do is put people in place to help them alter the Constitution. And so there's a difference between, an originalist interpretation of the Constitution versus judicial activism. And so when they're denied their opportunity to engage in judicial activism, that scares them. And so what they're afraid of more than Neil Gorsuch or Brett Kavanaugh or Alito or Clarence Thomas, what they fear more is the fact that they are denied the opportunity to engage in really a perversion of the Constitution. So what they fear really is the Constitution itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they know that if you have somebody that just actually adheres to the binding of the Constitution, meaning let's subscribe to the enumerated powers, the government can do this, what's specifically enumerated, and it can't do what's not specifically enumerated. And that, you're exactly right, Congressman Crawford. That's a great analysis. That does seem to be what they are worried about. Well, I listen, I really appreciate you coming on. It's always great to have you on, and I look forward to doing it again here in a couple of weeks.
Let me throw this out real quick to farmers that are listening. I tell you, it's not lost on me or anybody else the fact that U.S. farmers, Arkansas farmers in particular, are stepping up to do their part to reclaim American sovereignty in the global marketplace. So while we endure some short-term discomfort, the long-term payoff is going to be much more beneficial. So I just want to commend Arkansas farmers for their willingness to really take it for the team here, broadly speaking. And they know what I'm talking about, and you know what I'm talking about. It's uncomfortable right now, but in the long term, we're going to be much better off. And for those farmers that understand that, I appreciate that, and we're working hard to address this. But in the meantime, I appreciate what they're doing. I appreciate their willingness to take one for the team for a better America.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. Sacrifice is very much appreciated in that regard. Congressman Rick Crawford, I appreciate it, sir.